Hey y'all, welcome back to another installment on the Boring Life of Faith. Today is Rare Disease Day. It is Tuesday, February 28th, 2023. And because it's Rare Disease Day, I wanted to make sure I spoke up about a rare disease that I was diagnosed with. In 2019, I was diagnosed with Graves' disease. You may have heard of Graves' disease because of Wendy Williams. Maybe you heard about it because Missy Elliott was also diagnosed with it. And the reason you don't hear many people diagnosed with it is because it's rare. Also, a lot of people don't like to talk about having a diagnosis that's chronic. Maybe they're just private about it. Maybe they feel embarrassed. Sometimes people don't want to hear everyone's opinions or their judgments. Or sometimes it's because a lot of times people kind of leave you hanging and it almost reminds you about how lonely it can be to go through something like that by yourself. Because I always say, no one's going to lay in that hospital bed with you. You are there on your own with yourself. Even if people are there to support you, you're going through it physically on your own in that space and time. Even if the people who love you are there and they have their own physical experience from watching you go through things and suffer in different ways, it's still you. It's your journey and only your journey. And so, because of this diagnosis, I wanted to show up and speak so that those of us out there who are diagnosed with Graves' disease know that they're not alone. When I was first diagnosed, one of the first things I did was I logged on to social media and I started trying to find people who had accounts that were not private that mentioned or tagged Graves' disease in some type of way. And I followed some of those people. I messaged some of them. Almost all of them would write back and tell me things they did to try to help themselves because the first things you hear about are you got to take these meds, and then there's a possibility you may need surgery or you may need to take this radioactive treatment to address your thyroid. And I won't go into all of these things in this video, but I will say that if I had to think of three things that are the toughest things to deal with for me at this stage, so I was diagnosed in October 2019, so it's February 2023. Today, I would say the top three things that I find that I deal with are pain. Pain is something that I deal with almost every day. And it really doesn't hit me until it's really, I guess, intense pain. Sometimes I have nagging pain here and there, and I can just get through it. Even when the pain is intense, I often make myself just continue through it. My pain often is right now because when I first was diagnosed, it wasn't in those places like it is now. So now it's usually in my upper back, in my shoulders, it's in my wrists and my hands, it's in my legs, my hips, my ankles, and my feet. That's where my pain usually occurs. One day last week, I cried myself to sleep from the pain. And I'm sure someone could say, why don't you just take pain meds? I could. I'm not a fan of that because I would end up taking them every day. And I would prefer not to if I don't have to. Every day it isn't that bad. And thankfully, usually when I wake up, that's not how I feel. I'm no longer in the same pain. The other thing about the pain, for those of you who may be watching who don't have this diagnosis, and maybe you're watching it because you have a loved one or a coworker who's dealing with this, one thing about it I've noticed is that the pain is not consistent. It sometimes happens where you're experiencing the pain in at 9 o'clock, let's say. By 9:30, you don't feel it anymore. Or you're experiencing the pain at let me just pause for a second because it's every time I record a video, my dog decides she wants to be up and about. I'll be right back. All right, y'all, I'm back. Okay, she does this every time I record. She snores louder. She starts wiggling and shaking and doing all her stuff. So she was just knocked out, and now she's up being wild. Okay, she wasn't really being wild. It's just I'm recording. Okay, so sometimes I might be repeating myself, but what I noticed is that I could have pain, let's say at 9:30 or 9 o'clock, and by 9:45 it's not there, or it's not as intense where I notice it. Then it could be where I have no pain at all, and boom, out of nowhere, hey, I'm here. And I have noticed usually the pain for me happens in the afternoon. Sometimes I wake up and it's there. So that's my experience. And I want to record future videos or videos in the future that where I talk about things that I do to try to help myself through this process and healing and taking care of myself. The second thing I can tell you that I have experienced that's probably one of my toughest things right now is the loneliness that's wrapped around it. People with Graves' disease, I think I could probably say don't organically meet people with Graves' disease. I think if your endocrinology office had, I guess, a support group, or if you went through the Graves' Disease Foundation and found a support group, I think those are different ways you could meet someone. But generally speaking, I meet people with autoimmune conditions, but I have never met someone with Graves' disease. And that can be a lonely experience because the thyroid controls so much with the human body. And so when it's not functioning optimally, your symptoms that show up, they often don't show up in a way where it engenders this feeling or thought of compassion or empathy. When people have the big C word, the compassion just pours out of people. But when you're thinking about Graves' disease, one, people don't know a lot about it. But if it's not leaving you debilitated and you can't move and maybe you can't talk or you can't eat, if it's not something extreme like that, or if people don't think there's a fear of death related to it, I don't know how it's tough for people to take it seriously and to really have compassion and understand what you're going through. It can seem like you're fine, you're just trying to get sympathy, you're just trying to get your way. You think it's worse than it actually is. It can lead people to feel that way, especially if someone's around you for a period of time. And I think people who are around you in the moment, just for brief moments, they can experience, oh man, I don't know what that is, but I'm sure it's not great. It's an autoimmune condition. But I think for people that maybe are around you with more consistency, when they see so many things about you that appear to be normal, I think it kind of can play into the idea that you're fine. And that can be a lonely feeling when you feel like I'm just not fine. And I was just fine 5 minutes ago. And now I'm not. And so I find for me that I just push through. I'm regularly pushing through. And I don't think that's always a bad thing. But there are times where it probably would be better for me to not push through. But life happens. I mean, we do all have to live our lives. We have responsibilities and things that we have to do, and people we have to care for and care for ourselves. And sometimes the only way to do that is to push through. The last thing I would say, out of my top three things that make the diagnosis tough for me right now, would be that it's really, really, really hard to find the right doctor. And in the case for us, it would be an endocrinologist. I have not had an easy time finding an endocrinologist that, number one, doesn't think alternative treatment approaches are a joke or something to dismiss or ignore. That our thoughts, or in this case, my thoughts about my treatment, are usually met with the type of stance where the thought is, I went to medical school, I'm the specialist, not you. That's hard. And before this diagnosis, where my medical visits were once a year, go get my physical and go home, and now my medical visits are a little more frequent, it's tough to have the primary specialist that kind of oversees this diagnosis be so dismissive. It's almost as if you're not at the point of surgery or hospitalization, so you're going through that. Yeah, you should probably get on medication for that. And yeah. You sure it's not something else? I remember having an endocrinologist tell me that the symptoms that I mentioned were probably something else. And here I was looking on a hospital, it wasn't that hospital, but looking on a hospital's website about Graves' disease, and it was listing these different symptoms for Graves' disease. And my endocrinologist was like, nah, that ain't Graves' disease. Like, you got to be kidding me here. So it's not easy. There are some positives, I would say, that go along with it. And for me, one thing for sure is that it's made me very knowledgeable about my health. Another thing that it's done is it's put me in a position to be really tuned into my body and how I feel. And then another thing it's done is it's shown me my strength. It's shown me my resilience. I'm currently in a PhD program and I had a lot of work to get done in a short period of time. And I was nervous about adding this stress to myself and staying up really late and going to bed really late and not giving myself a lot of sleep just to try to get a lot of work done in a short period of time. And I was able to do it. And I was able to churn out good work as well. Initially, with my diagnosis, brain fog for me was huge. It was really bad. I felt like my response and thinking time wasn't as quick as it used to be, and that really bothered me. But thankfully, that's not currently a symptom that I deal with, and my mind was working on all cylinders, and I could tell as the closer I would get to midnight, my brain would say no ma'am, and I go to sleep and get up, and then my brain was ready to rock and roll again. So I was grateful that I was able to still push through and be resilient. Afterwards, I did do some things to try to ease down on my responsibilities for myself, and then I had to start picking it back up again, and I still do need to keep picking it back up again because we're knee deep in the semester. It was something else I wanted to mention to you all that I feel like I've gotten from this diagnosis. Learning a lot of things that can help me that are not necessarily related to what my physician tells me. And it's about, taking charge of your health. I think I just mentioned that. I'll go look at scholarly articles and see what works for someone with my condition. I will look at different people's Instagram sites and say, that sounds interesting. Let me go over here and see if that'll work for me. And let me do some more research to see what I think about that. And let me try this and let me try that. It's been really, really, really helpful for me to take ownership of myself in that way. And I would not have done it. I've always been someone that cared about health and little natural things here and there and try to be healthy, but I've never been someone that took this level of ownership over myself until receiving this diagnosis. And it's really informing how I would like my career to play out in the future and the different ways that I want to help people. So, Graves' disease ain't the greatest. We know no one wants to be in a position like this. It's tough, and I want you to know that I see you. When I was initially thinking about recording this, I kept crying, thinking about what others may be going through because when I was thinking about recording it, it was around the time I was having so much pain. But thankfully, today's not one of those days, or at least not right now. And I want you to know that you're seen. There are people out there that are going through maybe not the same symptoms, but the same tough stuff you're dealing with. And if you're one of those people, message me, or leave me a comment, and we can talk back and forth about it. And my plans are to continue to put out content related to Graves' disease or just healthy options in general so that you all can follow them. And if you're somebody who maybe is watching this and you have a family member who was diagnosed with some kind of thyroid something or other. You don't know what it is. A lot of people don't understand. I remember on The Real Housewives of Atlanta, Nene called it thyroids with an S. Because I think a lot of people don't even know where it is in the body, how many you have, what does it do, what do they do. So it's not, there needs to be a lot more education and knowledge about the thyroid. It's one. And so if you're someone that's connected to, related to someone that has some thyroid stuff that has gone on for them, you may want to keep watching or hanging around my channel to see different things you can do to keep yourself healthy so that maybe you don't have to have a thyroid something or other end up happening to you later in life, or at some point in your life. Anyway, thanks for watching. I appreciate you hanging out and listening to me. Drop down in the comments and tell me about your experience. Let's support one another. And if you're out there and you don't have it, I hope you don't get it. Take care of your health. And if you have an autoimmune condition or any other rare disease out there, we all know that it's not easy to walk this path, but I do believe if you receive the diagnosis, then you have what it takes to be able to make it through and manage it and be optimistic. Be optimistic and hold up your beliefs that good things will come to you. And I'm hoping for that and I'm praying for that for us. All right, y'all. Have a good day. Bye.